Welcome to Working Class Hollywood, conversations with people that make the movies, TV shows, and entertainment you love. If you're looking to break into or move up in the entertainment industry, or you're just a fan of content and want to hear about how it's made, this is the podcast for you. I'm your host, Jeremiah Smith. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Working Class Hollywood. Before I get started with today's guest, who is a very, very special guest, I want to make a quick announcement. This is going to be the second to last episode of what will be season 1 of Working Class Hollywood. I am starting production on season 8 of Vanderpump Rules in a few weeks here. So I am going to pause on this podcast because I just will not have time to be in production on Vanderpump and also be doing a good job at this podcast. So I'm going to take a few months off for the summer, and I will be back in the fall with more guests, more interviews. So that being said, more important than ever that you subscribe to the podcast now. So when I start back up in a few months, you will get those notifications and you will know that the episodes are coming out again. So subscribe to the podcast, rate it, leave a review, let me know what you think, and I will be back in a few months. This episode and then one more episode after this, and then it'll be a few months off. Okay, today's guest is a very special one, someone very near and dear to my heart. She is a professional pastry chef, a former culinary producer and food stylist, a current project manager for a global ingredient manufacturer and distributor, and also my wife, Carrie Smith. Hi, Carrie.
Hi, Jeremiah.
And she's a little nervous. I put her on the spot and asked her to come do this with me. Well, I wanted to, I asked my wife to come onto this podcast. I asked you, Carrie, not just because I think she's like the coolest chick ever, but I think that she is going through something professionally right now that I think a lot of people will be able to relate to. And, you know, what you have done and what you've chosen to do, I think is, you know, it's very respectable. I think is very brave of you. And I thought it'd be interesting to kind of hear the story from you and, you know, see if people can relate. I think they will. But to start, why don't you give people that are listening just a quick background of, you know, where you're from professionally, kind of like how you ended up where you are now. What's your background? Where are you from and how'd you get here?
Okay. So I'm originally from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I went to college at the Culinary Institute of America in Hyde Park, New York. I knew from the get-go that my world was going to revolve around food in some fashion. I wasn't really sure. Worked in bakeries and, you know, different culinary jobs in order to fulfill the necessary requirements for me to go to the CIA.
One of the things that, honestly, that I find like most impressive about you is that you knew that you wanted what you wanted to do from like a teenager, right?
Yeah, I think if I remember correctly, and I've told the story, I think to you, the first time I saw cream, liquid, heavy whipping cream, whip up to whipped cream, I was totally hooked. I was shocked and amazed as to what this could do. And I was, you know, obviously I've had it when I went to restaurants, but I was a kid. I think I was probably middle school-ish age. When it was my stepfather who made this dessert and showed me how to do it. And I was just hooked and I wanted to pursue it. You know, worked through high school and then went straight into the CIA, like 2 months after graduating high school.
Yeah. It's so, I mean, I say I'm impressed by it because like I've been like the exact opposite in my life. Like I've like never knew what I wanted to do when I grew up, and I kind of like stumbled my way through the dark into producing, which I love now, and I feel like it's kind of like my life's purpose in a way. But like I didn't, I had no idea. Like I went to UCLA, was an English major because I thought maybe I'd be a teacher, and then randomly ended up interning, and I was like, oh, maybe I'll be an agent, or maybe I'll work in scripted, or maybe I'll, I kind of like bounced around and just like followed doors as they opened. But the fact that you knew that you wanted to be a pastry chef from like age 8 or whatever it was, I think that's something really cool about you.
Thank you. Yeah, I think it's been fascinating, all the different avenues that food can take you. So once I got to the CIA, I knew pretty much immediately that pastry was going to be my choice or like my avenue. You do get a scope of culinary at the same time, and it was pretty quick that I knew did not want to go down that path.
Why about pastry, or what about pastry versus culinary like appealed to you and that you liked so much more?
I have no desire to touch meat, and I knew that, which is funny because now I'm a vegan. It took me a long time, but I had no desire to ever touch meat. I didn't want to prepare it. I didn't want to cook it. I was always, when I had to do the culinary, air quotes, the culinary side of things, it was the salads, it was the soups, it was the appetizers. I would help out on the line in restaurants, of course, but I wasn't excited by it. It was just to do it because I had to learn it. It was part of my education, but I got no fulfillment from it at all.
So you went to the CIA.
I went to the CIA, and in the middle of that, I did my externship at the Four Seasons Hotel in Philadelphia. So I got, immersed into like the real world, business kitchen, so it's just everything. You're just thrown into it. You learn every aspect of it. It's part of the requirement. Go back, you finish out into the advanced level. And then from there, I made my first trek out to California. So I went to San Francisco first, had no real knowledge of California, but I loved it once I got there. I had to work basically at 3 restaurants at one time. It's very expensive. I was there for a year, constantly working, and then I ended up going back home for a short period for family reasons. And then I ended up making my way back out to California, but this time I went south. So I went down to San Diego first, worked in restaurants. I was there actually with my... I was down in San Diego for...
Ex-boyfriend. You can say that. It's fine.
No.
You had an ex. It's okay.
Well, I had a few of those, but I was just thinking at that point, it was what was my best, my college roommate, my best friend. We originally moved down to San Diego together, worked in different restaurants. She worked in bakeries. I worked in restaurants. I realized pretty quickly that San Diego really wasn't giving me what I wanted to, and I had an opportunity to become an apprentice teacher in Los Angeles. And I had never done that before, but I had always enjoyed showing people how to recreate recipes when I'd working with them in restaurants. And I just literally, on a whim, I called them and I wanted to see if I would be eligible for the opportunity to be heard. And they said, plan a demonstration and drive up to Pasadena or South Pasadena where they were located and try out. That's all you can do. So I decided to do the most elaborate thing that I knew of, which is sugar pulling. And I made a pulled sugar basket, and I brought flowers and told them how to manipulate the sugar and put it together. And they gave me the gig on the spot, basically. So I taught.
And now, what was the name of the school when you started? Because it became the Le Cordon Bleu, but it was something different before that, right?
Well, it started out as Southern California School of Culinary Arts, and
Yeah.
then shortly after became California School of Culinary Arts. They just took away the Southern, but they expanded at that time. And then I was there for about 3 years, and I left. I was able to, I love teaching. It was what I really enjoyed, but I had an opportunity to open my own business, which, in the grand scheme of things, that's what you feel is what you want to do.
Yeah.
So my college roommate at the time, who was my best friend, we decided to go into business together, and I made the trek back down to San Diego, but a little bit more up in the mountains. And I went to Julian, California. So total different culture.
Yes, and anyone that's I feel like nobody knows about Julian except for people that live in San Diego. Because when you grow up in San Diego and your parents are like, "Hey kids, want to go to the snow?"
Exactly.
Then you drive an hour and a half east to Julian and sled on the side of the highway for 15 minutes and then go to Julian, the town, and get apple pie and cider and then drive home.
With as much snow as you can pack on the roof as possible.
Yeah,
to see if it
yeah.
makes it.
Yeah. Oh my God, I forgot about that. Southern Californians are so funny. Pack the roof full of snow. And meanwhile, people in the East Coast are like, these fucking assholes.
Right. I grew up with it, and I'm like,
every day. Yeah. So you had your bakery in Julian.
Yes.
The candied. What's it called again?
It was called Candied Apple Pastry Company.
Is it still there? Right.
The last time that we went to Julian, actually, no, I went with a couple girlfriends on a women's wellness retreat. We stopped over there, and it was still there. I think it's changed hands a few times, and they've manipulated it to do whatever's going to work for them. But The bakery itself, it was a cider shop, like the facility. It was part of the Julian Chamber of Commerce. And we were able to basically rent it, and it had a dwelling upstairs that I was able to live in. So my business partner at the time was married. She was expecting her first child. They lived in the town below, Julian, and I lived... Ramona, and I lived above the bakery because I was the single girl.
Which to me sounds like the premise for like, a good rom-com. The single girl living in the mountain, moves from the city to the mountain town, lives above her bakery,
Yeah, that was me. It's much more glamorous speaking about it than basically what it was. I mean, the things that you learn how to do very quickly. I was 27 when we opened the bakery. But I had to learn how to clean a grease trap. I had to learn how to, open and close open in the morning and prepare all the product and clean the floors at the same time and clean the bathrooms, everything. So it's not as glamorous once you're in it. I remember seeing many movies, where this beautiful baker is wearing high heels in the kitchen, and that was never the case.
And you were working like 20 hours a day, right? And like
I would get up. Yeah, I would get up about 2:00 in the morning, and I would work the shop. I think we closed around 6, but then I had to do prep the next day, so I'd probably work until 10 p.m. every night. And if I didn't have help, like running the front of the store, then I had to do like back of the house baking. I had sandwiches and salads at the same time, and then make all that, and then have to go back out and run the register and fill the cases.
Yeah.
So it was an amazing experience. I don't want to do that again in that specific way. I mean, I would love to have my own business again, but maybe not there. But I learned a whole lot. Fortunately, my relationship with my business partner did not work out. We ended up. We filed lawsuits against each other, and I ended up having to buy her out. But I was able to turn a profit, after a very short time, and I was very grateful for what I learned and what I could do because I didn't give up. I didn't walk away. I didn't, ruin my credit. I kept it going. I was able to sell it to someone who really wanted to live there, and they wanted to live above the bakery, and I really just wanted to get back to LA.
Yeah.
So I waited until I could do this. I had a little dog at the same time, so it was just literally me and my dog for a little over 2 years, because like the first maybe 8 months was with my business partner.
Right.
And then she's out.
Yeah. And this is probably a good thing that you went through this, because now every time that I pitch you like business ideas, I'm like, okay, honey.
And you do it
I've got a new business that we've got to start. And you're like, yeah, no, we're not doing that. You're like, I've been there, done that. That's not a good idea.
It's much harder than what you probably think it's going to be.
So you moved back to LA after you sold a business.
Came back to LA. I was able to go right back into teaching. And at this point, it was the school had merged. It was bought out by Career Education Corporation, and it was now part of the Le Cordon Bleu.
Yeah.
So that was its new name. There was a lot of instructors that I used to work with that were still there. A lot of the administration was the same. I was able to kind of just jump right back in, and they had different programs now that I loved, and it was good. It felt like home again, coming back. And I was living back in Pasadena, where I was living before. I got to jump right back in to teach, and at the same time, a friend of mine who was also teaching, who I had taught with, she has just started into culinary producing for different types of shows like Hell's Kitchen.
Kim,
who was on your
Seeley. Yes, episode 3 or 4 of the podcast.
It was early on.
Yeah, you can listen to it. She talks all about culinary producing,
She's
food styling.
Amazing. Yes,
nailed it. All those fun food shows.
Yes, she just got back from a little trip in Europe. So jealous.
Good for her.
Just for culinary producing. But so we had taught together, and then she had merged into doing different things after teaching, and was starting to do television producing, and they needed pastry help on Hell's Kitchen. So I was able to teach, and at the same time I started, because the schedule I was teaching at, I think it was 3 days a week. So it was perfect. It was 2 nights and then all day on Saturday. But the other days I could go and I could help out in the prep kitchen for Hell's Kitchen. And I was there with Kim, so we were having a blast, and I got to meet all these new people and started understanding and learning about the television producing world. And so from there, I was asked to come again and be on another season, or start doing a prep for another show, and just like one-offs here and there.
Right.
And it was really fun, and Kim started getting like tons of gigs, and just jumping around doing tons of different shows. But I got to the point where I couldn't continue teaching and doing that. And the hope was that I could take a bit of a sabbatical from teaching and jump on to, say, one season of a show to really give it a full run to see if it was going to work out. Well, the school wasn't okay with that. So unfortunately, as much as I really didn't want to leave teaching, they couldn't really just let me leave and come back. That's just not how they ran the show or ran the school at that time. So I ended up having to leave completely so that I could jump on to, it was Ultimate Cake-Off. And I was, it was a really long production because we had a lot of pre-production we had to do and like testing all of the challenges and seeing what's going to work and then the actual run of the show. But it was amazing. And it was something I had never gotten to really get in before and, watching it and then doing a little bit on the prep side, but then to really be involved from the pre-production to the on show and just understanding the world of it. It was great. It was a lot of fun. It was hard. I mean, you're on set. I mean, we were on stages for the most part for a lot of the culinary shows I worked on, but we had, you'd be there at say 4 a.m. and sometimes you didn't wrap until midnight. A lot of hours.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so this is about the time that we met, right?
We met a few shows later, but it was for Cupcake Wars.
Yeah. So Carrie and I met working on Cupcake Wars. She was the culinary producer, and I was
I think it was season 2, right?
Yeah, and I was like the associate producer. I believe that was one of my first producing gigs. So I don't want to tell your story. So you worked for a few years doing just like pure food producing and stuff, right?
Yeah.
And then what happened?
Well, I mean, you and I, we had met and, we were friends for a while, but then we did another season of Cupcake Wars and we realized that we really liked each other. And so we started seeing each other more and more. We got to the point we were planning our future and I got pregnant. So Jared and I did pretty much everything not backwards, but like opposite of the norm.
Yeah.
Where we weren't living together. Or no, I think we had just started living together.
I just moved into my roach-infested
I left my beautiful, like month-to-month, awesome home in Pasadena.
With lots of natural light, walking distance to the South Lake Business District in Pasadena.
To your roach-infested home, because I love you.
Because I was in a lease that I couldn't break, and your place didn't have storage. There was like no place to put anything.
We could have figured it out, but that's fine.
It's still a sore spot in our relationship.
But yeah, so I think it was just maybe a couple months or even like 2 months into living in that apartment together, we found out we were pregnant.
Right.
And we kind of knew like we wanted to start a family. I mean, I'm older than you, just so everybody is aware. But and once we got together and we knew we wanted to have our life together, there really wasn't a reason to wait. And so once we became pregnant, my kind of goals shifted a little bit. I went more towards not just, working on a crazy fun show and having, 2 a.m. to whatever hours and no time really. Because, basically we could have crazy opposite schedules for all we know. And we were both freelance at that point.
Right.
So that's also hard because there's no union. So neither of us, I had health insurance just on my own that I had. And, it wasn't that we weren't together at that point, really. So it was a little worrisome for me being freelance.
I didn't have health insurance.
You didn't have health insurance. So being freelance, not having health insurance, not knowing where your next paycheck is going to come from. Because, it's you're hired for the run of the show or you're hired for the day of the food styling. There's really not a lot of security for me. I had great security when I was teaching. I knew where it was going from. I knew what was happening. But I wanted to try this opportunity, and it was amazing, and I loved it. But then my focus obviously shifts when I become pregnant. So I was given the opportunity to become the pastry chef technician for an ingredients and bakery manufacturer here in Southern California. And I think I had actually gone on one interview before I found out I was even pregnant. So I went down, I interviewed. I was like, oh, this is really interesting. It's around food. I'm sort of teaching. I'm training customers on how to use these products. I'm testing new things. I'm like, wow, this might be something that's amazing. And it's a regular, it's like a steady corporate pastry job. It's something I'd never even knew was really out there before. So then found out I was pregnant. I'm a very open and honest person.
Yeah, I was like, don't tell them. It's none of their business.
I immediately called them. We were on Halloween Wars, and I called them and I said, I just want you to completely know, like, I want to be completely honest, for whatever decision you're going to be. And, I'm pregnant. I just found out. And they said they didn't care. They really wanted me for this position. They said that I could come in, work for the 6 months or however months it was going to be, go on leave and then come back. And they were totally fine with that. And it made me feel even better and more welcoming to the company. And the people there were great. I was very lucky for the group I worked with on a day-to-day basis.
It was called Bake Mark.
Bake Mark, yes. So
you might see the trucks driving around town sometimes, like big white trucks with red letters saying Bake Mark.
Bake Mark.
And they manufacture like a lot of cake mixes or donut mixes. Like anytime you buy pastries at a grocery store or at a panaderia or donut shop or like a lot of the big chainy places, they use these products to like create their pastries.
Right. And here in Los Angeles, there's at least, I think the last time I checked, there was around 1,100 donut shops just in Los Angeles. And majority of those customers were for Bake Mark.
Quick side fun fact, Los Angeles is the donut capital of the world, right? We have the most donut shops per capita than any other city in the world.
It's crazy.
Fun fact. Okay, continue.
And they're tasty. And we made, Bake Mark made and still makes today, like very quality mixes, so it takes all the same scratch ingredients, they put them in a bag. They take the convenience portion of it, or they take the labor portion out, and they just basically let you be the creative side. So you open a bag, you throw it in, you add your yeast, you add your water, you add everything else to it. It's not where you like open a bag and you're done. You still have to manipulate, you still have to make it. And so I was able to come in and work with the technicians that were there. They trained me on how they worked with their customers. We did national food shows. We did videos. I mean, for me, it was great because I got to be teaching. I got to be demonstrating. I got to be learning about all these different products and what they were used for. And it was a scope I'd never even heard of before. So I was able to work there up until I got pregnant with my second child. And so I went on leave with Carter. Oliver was the first child, and then went on leave with Carter. Took a little extra time with Carter before I came back. It's a lot wrangling the two kids. And once I came back from maternity leave, I found out that Bake Mark had merged with its two sister companies. So we were basically three separate entities, global, but running independently. And the company decided to merge and have one global company all work together. So when I came back, not much had really shifted specifically in my role yet, but I was aware of what was happening in the different parts of the world. And I was offered a position pretty much right after I came back from maternity leave to move into the marketing side of the business, and not just for Bake Mark, but for the global company. And it was it's in food. It was intriguing. It was something I hadn't done before. And I felt that as much as I really enjoyed being the pastry chef technician, I figured, let's try this avenue. Let's see where else this can take me. And the understanding was I was going to use my product knowledge into the position, but also learn about the marketing side, which I don't really have that scope behind me.
Right.
So the new headquarters of the company was going to be based out of Georgia. Obviously, we're here in California, so that was part of the consideration that I had to think about is, did I want to travel to Georgia 4 to 6 times a year for this new marketing job? But the benefits were going to outweigh any of the worries or the negative thoughts that I might have had. Plus, learning the marketing side of it, really getting part of, understanding how they pull all their data and how they put it together and figure out what products they want to launch.
See, like the big picture, next level view of how the corporate baking industry works.
Mm-hmm. How they decide what they're going to launch, not just I got the products basically once it was already manufactured, but really to understand the nitty-gritty of, what's trending in the market right now. How do they pull all that information? How do they put it together into a business case? And so I decided after flying out to Georgia, meeting what would be my boss at the time, discussing it with you and what was best for the family, I'd accepted the offer. And I worked out of the Bake Mark Pico office for, I'm trying to think now, 18 months maybe. Same office I worked at when I was a technician. But around that time, the company decided to sell Bake Mark. And so I wasn't able to work out of that office anymore. And I was able to then move my position to work remotely out of our home here in Burbank.
And how long ago was that?
I think it's little over 2 years.
Yeah.
That I've been working remotely.
Right.
Yeah.
So I was like stoked about this because, you were driving like
25 miles each way.
25 miles each way to Pico Rivera. Mm-hmm. You had to leave super early in the morning and like fight rush hour traffic to get back. And this felt like a win because it was like, oh, now you get to be home and you can like help with the kids in the morning and you'll be around if they have a doctor's appointment or, it's soccer practice or whatever. And like, I get to see you. And like, it felt like a very, positive thing for us.
Mm-hmm. I mean, that desire is what I think a lot of people crave. The desire to want to work from their home, they're able to multitask, they can see their family. I think a lot of people want that and they crave that.
Yeah. And at first you were into the idea and you did it for 2 years.
Yeah.
You've done it for 2 years, still doing it.
Still doing it, a little over 2 years. And at first it was amazing. I mean, I'm an amazing multitasker. I mean, in
really,
general,
she is.
You can ask anybody I know or my bosses. It's very true. I mean, I can juggle so many things, and working from home allowed me to do that. And at first, it was great. And I mean, it was great for not just at first, but 2+ years. It worked really well. This year, I'm trying to figure out exactly when I could pinpoint it. It's hard to kind of just pinpoint it, but maybe. I want to say maybe in the last 6 months or so, maybe it's the boys getting older or it's different desires in my life. I'm realizing that even though the benefit of working from home is there, I still don't see you and the kids as much as I think I did at first.
You've gotten busier and busier. Like your responsibilities have grown, and what it's turned into is usually every morning you wake up at like 5 or 6 in the morning, and you go either into like the office / playroom that we have or out here in the garage, and you like lock yourself in. And
I basically have to like sequester myself away from the rest of you. And I have to hear the kids crying for me, or I have to hear, you trying to rush in the morning and I'm unable to help. The meetings times start earlier and earlier. I mean, the company is based on the East, but it really just started weighing on me about the quality of life and really what you see me doing every day, what the kids see me doing. I want to be proud, but I want the kids to see me and be proud of what I do. I want you to be proud. I want to be able to have, conversations about it and really enjoy the day-to-day life. And I've started realizing that I'm not really enjoying that quality of life. I'm not really getting the benefits that I thought I was going to get from working remotely. I'm a big people person. Mm-hmm. And, once it really clicked and it hit me, I'm by myself all day, in the house, basically. I may talk to you and the boys for a quick minute in the morning, but then I pick up the boys and I'm having conversations with toddlers until you come home. And that's basically it. That's my day. And so it really started clicking that I need a life. I need to get out. I need to be with people. I really thrived when I was in more of an office environment or any environment just with more people.
Yeah.
I can really feed off of different people. And that energy is what I realized I've been missing for a long time.
Yeah. So this is like the reason I thought it would be interesting to have you come on this podcast, because I think that there's a lot of people in the world, I'm sure, that are working in jobs that they're not happy in, that don't inspire them, dealing with things day to day that they aren't passionate about. And I think that a lot of people, they just kind of suck it up and they just kind of keep their head down and they just keep working and, just because that's their job and that's where their paycheck comes from and that's where their health insurance comes from and, whatever. But you have chosen to do something about it.
I've made the worst choice for having a family and a mortgage. But I think I've made the best choice personally,
right?
Because I'm the queen of sucking it up, and I've been doing it for a long time, especially working from home. And it's just I miss the excitement I would have every day about going to work, whether it was teaching or whether I was going on set and showing someone how to use something, or I was turning on the lights at my bakery and me deciding what I was going to do every day. The environment that I was in is fine for some, and people thrive at it. It's just, it didn't work out for me after a period of time. So after lots of thoughts and tears, both by myself, when I'm working by myself in my hole, as I call it. And with you, I've come to realize that it's just not worth it. We're on this earth for such a short period of time, and I want to be happy. And I want to. I'm a selfless person, for anybody can say that, but I want to be a little selfish right now and take some time to really decide what sparks that joy.
So I was talking to this guy the other day who's a working PA here in Los Angeles, and I asked him how he got his start, and he said that he was able to break into the business by attending a PA boot camp. And I about fell out of my chair because I had been thinking forever how useful it would be to have some sort of class that taught people how to be production assistants and then help them get jobs in the entertainment industry. And it turns out it exists. It's called PA Boot Camp, and it's a 2-day in-person training program where they will teach you everything you need to know about being a production assistant. How to handle yourself on set, how to use a walkie-talkie, how to read a call sheet. If you are serious about getting into film production, you have to go to PA Boot Camp. No school, no class, no website gets you into the door like PA Boot Camp does. You can check out their website at www.pabootcamp.com. There's a video for you to watch about the program. If you have any questions, you can also email them at pabootcamp@yahoo.com. The next session is June 8th and 9th in Los Angeles, so go to their website and sign up now. Now, let's get back to the show. Right. Well, what's funny about it is that we didn't have a lot of talks about the decision.
Well, that's true. Not the decision, but you've known for a long time.
No. I know you would complain, and be like, "Oh, this isn't fun anymore." Like, "Oh, I've just got to your job is just like conference calls and spreadsheets," and you try to tell me like what's going on in your day, and like my eyes glaze over.
Right, you tune out. You don't want to hear any of that.
The TPS report for the cost breakdown of the gelatinous blugada like channel marketing department. I was just like, okay, I can't listen to that. But I knew that you were. That you didn't love it, and I knew that it was like a struggle for you.
And you knew why I was doing it. I mean,
that's where we get our health insurance,
right?
Because I'm still freelance, and
exactly.
you earn a good salary, and we live in Los Angeles.
Mm-hmm.
We own a home. We have children that require after school care because we're both working. Our bills are high,
yes.
And it's hard, and it's hard to pull it all off on one salary in this town. I mean, that's just the way that it is. Even and I'm doing great. Like I'm working, and I'm on a great show, and like I've been promoted several times, and it's awesome. But even despite that, it is hard to like make it work here with everything that we have. I mean, obviously, like we could like scale it way back and live in like a 1-bedroom apartment, and you drive a brand new minivan that's super fancy, and there's ways that we could scale it back, but like with the house and the kids and everything, it's like requires a lot of money. Right. So from my perspective, this is how it went down. I've heard you kind of like grumbling about your job for months, just like that you weren't so happy. And then one morning, just a few weeks ago, I was literally like about to walk out the door to go to work, and you're like, I need to talk to you. And like the first thing that flashed through my mind was like, she's gonna divorce me.
Oh my God.
I don't know. It was just like you sounded so serious. I was like, oh God, what did I do? But no, what you ended up saying is that you actually like broke down and like you were crying about how this job wasn't bringing you any joy, and you want to do something that you're passionate about, and like you said, you want the boys to see you happy and not miserable, and the hiding every morning from them has been really hard from you. And I mean, I felt so bad, and like I have a lot of respect for you and a lot of sympathy for for your situation, and like I'm like, yes, honey, whatever you need to do, like that's what we need to do, what makes you happy. But it did come and I thought that was a great conversation. I'm glad you said that to me and everything. It did come as a little bit of strife the next day when you're like, I gave my notice. I was like, oh, okay, this is really happening, and it's happening now.
Yep.
So you quit your job, and next week's your last week.
I mean, I think once I talked to my boss and I verbalized everything that I had said to you, and I, like it takes me a lot to not suck it up. I mean, it takes me a lot to break down. I'm not a sharer.
You're not a crier.
I'm not a crier.
You're
I'm not a sharer.
Yeah, you're not like me. I'm like both of those things.
Right.
But like, no, and I knew the fact that
That I got to that level.
Yeah, whatever was like bothering you was bothering you so much that you were willing to like come to me and like open up and cry about it.
Yeah.
I knew that it was, big and serious, and yeah. But so maybe like I don't know, was there anything else that like went into like that decision, or like the thought of just like I need to get out, and like versus like what I'm sure a lot of people would suggest or say. I know that your dad would probably suggest, but it's like, well, like, you want to leave your job? Great. Start looking for a new one. Mm-hmm. And once you have it lined up, then you can give your 2 weeks notice at your old one and slide right into your new one. Just what was it that led you to make that decision, with haste, it seems like, versus like doing it the sort of like slow, traditional, like find the job before you leave the job way?
Well, the company that I had moved into for the marketing role, it went through many reorganizations, and it went through a recent one. I want to say February. I think it was February. And that one was probably the hardest reorganization for me. And I think I had been through 4 or 5. It's crazy to think that. And this last one, I wasn't really even offered a position. It was more, I was told what the position was. And I started, going where everybody else would go, that, sure, I should be grateful that I have a job, but in the same side of things, I wasn't even asked. I wasn't even thought of. I was more of just a name on a box. I was just somebody that they had to fill a slot. And it was very hurt. I felt that I wasn't really even thought of, that it was hurtful to me.
Right.
That
felt disrespected.
It was disrespected. It was, in the grand scheme of things, they probably thought that, well, she should just be grateful that she has a job, because other very close friends of mine lost their jobs after years of being with the company. So sure, on one side, I should be very grateful that I have a job, but anybody can have a job. And I think that's kind of where I started this spiral, that anybody can have a job. I could have a job tomorrow if I want. It may not pay the same. I can probably get a job that has benefits and it may not pay the same. And I can just go through the same motions that I've been doing for the past couple, years. And I didn't want that anymore. And I started every day feeling that I wasn't respected. And even though someone can say, like, oh, you do this so well, or, thank goodness you do this, or we're going to be lost when you aren't here to do this, I still was just a name to fill a box. And part of it was, so that was a big, that was a trigger, the most recent trigger. And part of it's also working remotely, that started to really weigh on me. And the fact that I couldn't really, the benefits weren't there because I didn't really get to see you. I didn't get to see the kids. And I was just having, earlier meetings, and I was still working later, as I started working, until 3, 4 p.m., sometimes 5 p.m. if there was a meeting. And that really just started to weigh on me. But this last reorganization definitely was the trigger. And I started feeling that, what am I doing? Why am I going to go through these motions every day just to have health benefits, just so my kids can not see me in the morning? And it didn't make sense to me. And I started to get really upset about how much I'd worked for in my career, and I had, I worked really hard to go to culinary school. I worked really hard to get my certification with ACF. I worked really hard to develop these relationships. And then I basically just lost them all, or I left them all once I decided to take a corporate position for the benefit of my family. And while I enjoyed aspects of each and every one of these kind of roles within the organization, it's just not enough now. It's not giving me that fulfillment that I'm looking for. And I don't feel happy. And I was getting depressed. I mean, it was getting to the point where, you're not there, you don't see it, and I'm not a sharer, but I was daily.
People who are listening to this think that we don't talk to each other.
Well, it's the mind numbingness that, of my job is really not something you're going to chat about. I'd rather hear about, what's happening with the Vanderpump kids, but it's, on the daily, I was getting more and more depressed. And, some people thrive working from home, but in my mind, I'm like, oh, I'm going to get up and I'm going to get up 30 minutes earlier every day, and I'm going to work out and be energetic. And then I would do that for like a couple days, and then I'd have to go sit in my hole. And, it just sucked all that enthusiasm out of me. And I don't want that. I don't want to continue that way. And I was very open and honest with my company, and I told them why. And as a people, they're wonderful. As motivating organization, not so much. And I said, I want to, I'm going to take a leap. It's scary. It's like as I said before, it's the worst thing I could have ever done for my family, but it's the best thing for me right now is to really go out there and decide what it is that I want to do. What's going to give me that creative joy and spark so that I'm probably not going to make as much money and hopefully I'll find the benefits, sooner than later. But it's what I want to do in order to be happy as a wife and as a mom and as an individual.
Yeah. And, I obviously am, we're going to make it work. And the finances, I'm sure we will figure it out. We're going to have to like batten down the hatches, I think, a little bit with the spending and tighten some belts here and there. We'll make it work. And it is a little nerve-wracking to think that we're going to lose our health benefits and lose your salary, and become a potentially single income family, and like barring you like finding something soon. But at the same time, I actually am like very impressed by your decision. Like I think it's like you're prioritizing your happiness, you're prioritizing your quality of life, you're prioritizing your passion and joy and like your spark for living over like what's practical and like just the money side of things, because that isn't what is the most important thing in life, right?
Right. And I want our boys to see that as well. And part of, my, not enjoying my job every day and, working from home and then, not really getting to do, or work with other people, it's a trickle down effect. I may not have had a great day, but I had so much fun, or I have so much fun once I pick up the boys and we get to hang out. But then in my mind, I'm going, well, it's Groundhog Day. I'm going to have to do this all over again the next day. And I would immediately become unhappy. And the boys could see it. I mean, they may not say that, but, as soon as I told our oldest that I was going to leave my job so I could find what it is that's going to bring me joy and bring me that spark, he gave me a giant hug and a smile because he could tell that I wasn't happy doing what I was doing. I mean, he knew I had a job and he knew that I was doing something, but for the fact that my young children can see that, I just can't continue this. It's like a downward spiral. I don't want to continue to do like the definition of insanity. It's like every day, same thing.
Yeah.
And even though no one's going to say that they're never not looking for a job. Of course, you're always going to look for something, or if something comes your way. But it's very hard to really devote time to really decide what it is you're going to want to do. And I know that my path will take me within some scope of food. It always does. Whether it is that I go back into teaching, or maybe I go into production, or maybe I go back into actual pastry production at a bakery or a restaurant. I may have to try a few things. I don't know. But I want to find that joy and that happiness that I come home and it's just like spilling out of my mouth that I get to tell you and the boys about.
Yeah.
This is what I did today, or bring home something, or talk to them about my day. And I want them to be excited and you to be excited about hearing what it is that I do.
Wait, so are you saying that if I would have like been more excited to hear about how your workday has gone, then maybe you would have just stuck around?
No, because even me talking about or explaining a story, I had more fun, sharing with you about hearing that some of the peeps that I worked with, didn't know that you worked with the Vanderpump Show, and they were like, "That's my favorite show." And
right, the interpersonal stuff is fun for you. But
that's way more fun, than what it is.
Well, you're making me think like, and this honestly isn't something that I had like really thought about, but like, we put all this work and effort and time and money into like raising our kids and giving them the best life that we think they should have, right? By like, we moved to this neighborhood because of the schools, or we put them in piano lessons because that's good for their brain development, and Oliver's in his Spanish school, like whatever. But like, there's probably like, they probably get more out of just like watching how we live and how we interact and like what we are as people. Like they're probably just absorbing that like sponges. And so like, the fact that you're able to see that and like see that like, oh, like my children will be better off if they see me happy, not just like have like, cheaper health insurance. Like that's like, I think I seriously, I'm like really like respect you for that. Like that's a really like wise compassionate way to look at the situation.
Yeah. I mean, it's just, they emulate, they take on parts of what their parents are or what they show to them, teaching or getting them up and getting them dressed and giving them breakfast. And, it could be a very loving morning, or it could be a crazy rush to throw a granola bar at them and get out the door. But I think it's how it's handled. I think it's what they see also, that I just want them to, enjoy life as well. I don't want them to grow up thinking that, you have to kill yourself just to go anywhere in this world. I mean, like you said, we have a lot, which is wonderful. I'd be happy living in a tiny house and, not having a lot of things that we don't need, and the boys hear this all the time, about things like, can we get rid of this, or can we donate this, or, is this something that brings you joy, or is this something you're really gonna, or can someone else benefit from this if you're not playing with it, or if you're not going to use it? So I just want them to, I want them to grow up and, be mindful of what it is they want to do, what's going to make them happy. I mean, we can all do anything we want to do. It's just finding how to get to that point.
Yeah. I'm lucky to have married you.
I'm pretty lucky too. You're very supportive. I mean, I have to say that it's the scariest thing to have to tell your spouse that you need to quit your job. It's not that, I have a thought or I'm thinking about maybe going into a different avenue. For my mental health and stability and for the sanity of our household, I need to find something that brings me this joy. I can't continue to suck it up. And, I want to be happy, and selfishly I want to be happy, but also for the family, I want us all to be very cohesive and excited about life.
Yeah. And where do you think you're going to go? Like, what do you think's next for you? And I know that you're looking and evaluating multiple options, but and I think I ask you this all the time, you never quite have like an answer, but like, what do you want?
That's the thing. It's hard to say, I want to do X. Because if that was the case, then why wasn't I doing it 2.5 years ago or 5 years ago or however years ago when I started into this corporate world? I'm not sure. And I don't know if what I'm going to want to do, in my next path is the same path I want, or the same role I want to have in 5 years. It may also evolve and it might shift, and things are going to ebb and flow, I think, as I figure out what it is I want to do. I know, and I've said this to many different folks over the course of the years, that I think teaching was the most fulfilling for me, because I love being able to show someone how to take those same ingredients or that same liquid whipping cream and show them, and to see that like spark or that desire that they have. And they're like, oh my gosh, I didn't know you could do that. I'm like, I know, me either, right? I mean, it was the coolest thing ever. And, whether it's back in like a private sector, or maybe it's in a school district, or maybe it's for a after school program, who knows? But I know that was one aspect of my career that I've loved. And I was able to take that into every other aspect, whether it was TV production or corporate demonstrations or videos and trainings I did for, the whole company. That was always still an element. So I could go in that direction. If it can find me and take me there, we'll have to see.
Well, I'm excited to see where we go, where you go, and obviously where we go, because we're married. And you're stuck with me.
Yeah, and you're stuck with me too. I think you're excited that I'll be around more in the morning.
No, I love having you around the house. I mean, that's one of the what I thought would be the benefits of you working from home, because obviously our two boys are little like north of the wall wildlings sometimes, and they can be a handful in the morning. So it's always better when you're like, 1-on-1, two against two, versus like, being outnumbered. So that'll be nice. But also just, having you happier. And
yes, that's what I'm looking forward to as well.
And you're going to Marie Kondo the shit out of your life. Find what sparks you joy.
I've already started that with on the clothing and our home, but yes, I have to do that on me personally. And like I said, it's the scariest thing in the world, but nobody should have to go through life being that unhappy. Yeah. It's just not worth it. It's too short, you know, and our kids are going to be teenagers in the blink of an eye, and they're already, I don't want to continue this until they get that when they're teenagers. Right. I want to have a different kind of mindset in the house with them.
Right. Well, thanks for coming out to the garage and letting me ask you all these questions for 45 minutes.
You're welcome. It was interesting and kind of nervous.
You told me to remind you when we're done that we need to change the laundry.
Yes, I need to swap that out since we just got back from our camping trip. So.
All right. Well, thanks, honey.
Love you.
All right. That was my chat with my wife, Carrie Smith. I know that was a little different than what I normally do, but hopefully there are some people out there that might be struggling with their job and the happiness they find in it or not, and they can relate. Thank you guys so much for listening. I really do appreciate it. Just a reminder, this is the second to last episode of season 1 before I take a break for a few months, so subscribe to the podcast now so you'll get those notifications when I start publishing episodes again in the fall. If you want to reach me, you can email me at show, SHOW, at workingclasshollywood.com, or you can find me on Instagram. It's Working Class Hollywood. I've got my last episode of season 1 coming out next weekend, and I will see you then.